that he always knew somebody down at the end of the road, whether it's a private road or whatever it is, and so you just go down there and there'd be somebody at the end of the road and they'd say, "Oh yeah, how are you?" And then all the kind of the stories you get. Anyway, there's a lot of information. There's a wonderful plat book over there that Margot's looking at right now. And it's basically the plat of Lakewood, the 25 by 100 foot lots. There's page after page after page of Lakewood lots, all right? And anyway, so back to the beginning, and I'm just going to kind of plagiarize some of this stuff. This was the greatest subscription premium ever offered, and here's the reason why. It says, getting back to Lotto's Association, it started the Chicago Evening Post, a newspaper in Chicago. In order to increase their subscriptions, they needed a giveaway premium, as they called it, in the promotion brochure. Other newspapers were giving away clocks, books, dishes, etc., in exchange for long-term subscriptions, but the Post decided to give away land, to be specific, a 25 by 100 foot lot in Lakewood. Old receipts show that for a subscription in the amount of $23.20, you could receive 2 lots. The payments were $2.90 per month. Tack notices to the property owners also included an invitation fee of $1, membership dues, including the Courier, a small monthly newspaper which reported on Lakewood happenings, for $2 to the Lakewood Lot Owners Club Association. All taxes and fees were to be remitted to the association, who in turn paid all the taxes owed to each township in a lump sum once a year. And so basically they created 43,250 lots, 25 by 100, all right? And it's amazing when you look at that. Also, we should also announce, like for the next meeting at Fruitvale, William Hanson has done a book called The Lost City of Fruitvale, Volume 1, Volume 2, and I had an email from him about 2 days ago. He also is in the process right now of doing a book on Lakewood, and so that will be coming forth, and I think he'll be at our meeting at Fruitvale on July 19th. Everything's the 19th, that's 20th.
July 19th.
July 19th at the White River Campgrounds. Anyway, he'll be there and can talk about that. So anyway, the newspaper obviously has to invent words and make things kind of song and dance. And so they did a wonderful kind of little handout kind of thing that you'd get in the mail. Lakewood lies in the center of the summer resort region of Michigan. It lies just far enough from Chicago to escape the Sunday excursionists, and just far enough inland from Lake Michigan to be sheltered from the lake winds, and perhaps the best transportation facilities of any summer resort in Michigan. For it lies on the Pere Marquette Railroad between Muskegon and Whitehall. Not near the Pere Marquette Railroad, but on it. And all year around, the big Goodrich boats run to Muskegon and connect with the Pere Marquette Railway for Lakewood. In the summertime, the boats leave Chicago every day at 8:30 p.m. and arrive in Muskegon at 6:30 a.m. the next morning. The Pere Marquette station is at the head of the Goodrich dock, and the train leaves at 7:05. And at 7:30 you're at Lakewood. In the summer, the Goodrich boats also run to Whitehall, and you can take the Pere Marquette Railroad from Chicago directly to Lakewood 3 trains a day. Lakewood is an ideal summer resort, surrounded by the well-known resorts of White Lake. I hope I don't bore you. I used to get very bored when people read things, but I thought this was kind of interesting. Anyway, so it goes on to say that the land is level and dry. There's not 1 inch of wet or swampy land on the whole tract. And it goes on about how the falling leaves embellish the soil, etc., 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 and that you're surrounded by, putting down a well, you get fresh, pure water, and you can see who people may be living in tight situations in Chicago, and it's 100 degrees or whatever. This is all. It's come on, you're going to buy it, and so you somehow get involved and you do your subscription. So after those kind of words. The script continues here. The program was a big success, with hundreds of people becoming proud owners of Lakewood lots. To give the people more than just a lake, the association began building a real resort facility. It was located on the south side of Fox Lake, that's where we are, on what is now commonly known as Park Hill. And Park Hill is the hill right behind us, which we'll be going to on the walk. There was a large clubhouse with wide verandas hung with ferns and furnished with tables and chairs for lounging, a refreshment room, a reading room, a bathhouse was built on the upper level, it was built on the shoreline and with a dance pavilion overlooking the lake. There was a men's club that contained a bowling alley room and a cafeteria. There was a separate building which would accommodate 150 people at one time and 41 room tent cottages. That's what Dan was asking about, the tent cottages, which later turned into little kind of wooden buildings, which Mary Kay said that also they're almost like storage. They're like I guess almost like a masked mini barn in today's world kind of thing. Any case, the tent cottages were also available for rent and a daily maid service. They could be rented for $2 a day and $10 a week for one person. There's a small increase for extra people, etc. And then an orchestra was brought out to entertain the dance hall 3 times a week, hammocks, entertainment, etc. And then the travel, which it gets into, it's similar to, when Dan and I were working on like looking aft, obviously the game was you would catch the Goodrich steamship line from the Chicago in the evening, maybe 6, 8 o'clock at night, something like that, and then the next morning you would be up here at White Lake at the Sylvan Dock, the Goodrich Dock in town, or the Harvey Dock in Montague kind of thing. But anyway, the options were train. For those favored with a car or accommodating friend and not caring for water, the trip by the Pere Marquette train to Lakewood is quite satisfactory. There are now 2 trains each day, one way between Chicago and Lakewood, making a trip from 6 to 8 hours. One can leave Chicago at noon, arrive at Lakewood at 7:11 in the evening, or can start at midnight and reach there by 8:30 a.m. Berths can be had on the night train to Muskegon, a bus taken to Lakewood. And then it says somehow at Lakewood Station, there's photographs of the Lakewood Station over here, and they had also the train track that came out, and the Toonerville trolley. It says, at Lakewood Station, one connects with the Lakewood Street Railroad and starts a 5-mile trip through the woods to the clubhouse, where breakfast is waiting. The route is around 2 sides of Lakewood Platte, past many private cottages tucked away under the trees. And then it says boat. But the favorite route for most people is by boat. The Goodrich Streamers really helped create Western Michigan. And you sort of wonder, why do we have a boat that goes to Milwaukee when everybody wants to come from Chicago? I don't know what's all that about, but somehow someone might ask. Mr. Entrepreneur, where are you? But the favorite route for most people is by boat. The Goodrich steamers leave the dock at Michigan Avenue and the river at 7:45 p.m. and arrive in Muskegon at 7 o'clock in the morning. The lake is usually calm and always cool and refreshing, no matter how it may be on the land. And one rises early in the morning after the night of a soothing rest, rocking in the billows, ready for a 16-mile ride by auto bus, that's from Muskegon, over perfect roads, I'm sure, through farms and woodland scenes, with dew sparkling in the grass and the birds singing in the trees, and the wildflowers open to greet the morning sun. And so, are we going to Lakewood, or are we going to Lakewood? We're going to Lakewood. And anyway, that's part of the myth and of the propaganda that somehow created it all. And
you're lucky Lakewood doesn't have wind.
Yeah, well, it's far enough inland from the destructive forces of whatever. Anyway, Mary Kay mentioned also, 1912, that's when this all started, and that, in 1912 also, Crystal Lake, the scout camp started. And, that's an interesting story, too, in that somehow Dan could probably be helping on this, but basically I think Crystal Lake, kind of the scout camp, started with people like Clarence Pitkin, Ruth is here, etc. They got together, and it's almost like where we are today, that someone has to get something together to promote something, to make something happen, and when it happens, it happens. But somehow, those guys in 1912 had the foresight to sort of, they baited the scout camp basically by saying, we will give you, I think it was 40 acres or something at Crystal Lake. Come on up, gang. Do we have a deal for you? You bring those kids up there to this camp, and it'll be wonderful, etc. What that also meant is that they would buy all their supplies in Montague and Whitehall and Muskegon County, and that's directing business flow, etc. And that worked. And obviously, the Owasso Scout Camp went up to 6,000 acres of land, and just recently they've been dispersing a lot of it, including Crystal Lake. But and then there was the 1920s. Was with Flapper Time, etc. Very successful, big deal. Lakewood, Depression, Depression, 1930s. 1930s, and Mary Kay mentioned the snow. The snow load really crushed a lot of buildings. Also, a lot of people were very depressed and economically depressed, and it was hard times. And so the 30s, and then on that, then came the war years, and then the war years somehow, you couldn't get gas, you couldn't have gas coupons, you couldn't drive, you couldn't go over 35 miles an hour. I mean, all sorts of strange things, etc., that no one today would comprehend. As part of the war effort. And so then the war years happened, and then in the 1950s, I was talking to Mary Kay, and there was a guy, and I was thinking of the name, and his name was Jimmy Matz. Anybody belong to Jimmy Matz here?
No, but I know I can do some history.
It's coming. Anyway, during World War II, they built endless barrack kind of housing. It was almost like a wartime camp. Rudderman Terrace at different places in Muskegon for the war workers who basically worked at Continental Motors, Lakey Foundry. I mean, Muskegon was really a big gray iron foundry area. And so they were almost like, as I mentioned, wartime barracks, etc. And so then they decided after the war it was time to clear those. And if I'm correct, Jimmy Matz, he was a real estate guy. And so he bought those buildings and he sort of sliced them in half or even in thirds.
He went down and recruited North Carolina, South Carolina. This was over at Goose Egg Lake. Okay. And recruited people to come work at Camaway and Cannon. He brought those men up here and put them in those huts. They literally had dirt floors, and they worked their buns off till they could get their families to come up here. And they were, I would say a Quonset hut, because they were, and then even up into the 50s, some of those were still being converted into permanent homes. Mm-hmm. But that's all across White Lake Drive.
Across Russell, right?
Across Russell,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. One of the sort of sensitive things which you don't talk about, etc., is that basically Jimmy Matz, cut these barracks out and sold, just cut them in half and just put them out in the countryside, etc. But also the population basically was black. And so then all of a sudden you have a black-white issue, etc. And then also at some point in time, like Whitehall, the school district here wants to annex to Whitehall, and then that presents kind of all those kind of integration problems, etc. Yes, no, whatever. And so somehow that saga kind of came and went, and then you're now in the 60s, and I think it's very interesting now what's going on in Lakewood is that basically underneath there still are the 25 by 100-foot lots, and the 40-foot, the right-of-ways. I would urge you to look at the old plat book over here on that one table. I mean, it's page after page after page of Lakewood lots, etc. And that kind of, I think I can stop here and I'll say any questions on what I have had to say.
Maybe it was Martha's Vineyard, and they had the old Chautauqua associations from 100 years ago.
Right.
And they had very small lots, like 25 feet, so that people would come and they tent for a few years, and then they build this darling little, dinky little,
Cutie pie, right.
Yeah, with all the bric-a-brac,
Right.
very narrow,
Vineyard.
and just summer time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, that kind of gets back to when a couple of years ago when we had that thing called Living Lightly on the Land we did down at Tom Thompson's, and that people didn't have 5 bathrooms and 5 showers and 3 johns that are flushing 24 hours a day kind of thing, and you walk down to the pump and carry the water back, and so people live differently, and you can different densities, and also there is water and it'll perk. Yes.
Yeah, the situation here in Lakewood at the time when we were selling these lots is you had a picture pump. You didn't have flushing toilets. You had a privy outhouse, and so the demand for percolation into the ground and the movement of that water was very limited. And so you could have a 100 by 100 lot and not have to worry about contamination of the
That
wells.
seems large to me, actually. I
So,
don't know.
I had called for 2 lots, you got
Yeah.
for 23, but you needed to get twice that in order to put a cabin on.
Yeah. Also, a thing like there was an era also that they went through where basically the lake level